right at 7 o'clock, so I'll call tonight's city council meeting to order. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Valento. Here. Councilmember Erickson. Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council on any topic of your choosing. Is there anyone that signed up for open forum this evening?
I have no one signed up.
All right, and nobody online either?
No.
All right. With that, we will turn it over to Chief Peterson, and tonight we have a swearing in of 2 of our newest police officers.
Mayor and City Council members, good evening. The mission statement of the Forest Lake Police Department reads as follows. Our organization is dedicated to providing a safe and inviting environment through community partnerships and crime prevention. We will strive to deliver superior services and instill the highest quality of life within our community. This mission statement is written in bold letters on the wall of our patrol workstation area, and it is the first thing each officer views when they walk into the room and arrive for their shift. The mission statement for the Forest Lake Police Department and the law enforcement oath of office are both powerful expressions of allegiance to the citizens we protect and serve each and every day. Tonight, I am pleased to have the opportunity to introduce you and our community to the newest members of our police department who will reaffirm their oath of office in front of the City Council, our community, and to their family and friends. Officer Tim Van Grinsven and Officer Cole Gaspers were hired to fill 2 police officer vacancies in late 2022. And we finally have an opportunity to have them in front of you today to recite the oath of office. If I could have Officer Tim Van Grinsven and Officer Cole Gaspers come up to the front of the room, and if there's a family member that you'd like to join you. Yep, great.
Do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the police officer
within the city of Forest Lake and state of Minnesota.
within the city of Forest Lake and the state of Minnesota.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And repeat after me. I, Cole Gaspers,
I, Cole Gaspers,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
within the city of Forest Lake and state of Minnesota.
within the city of Forest Lake and the state of Minnesota.
Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Tim Van Grinsven and Officer Cole Gaspers. take a minute here. Everyone can go upstairs, family, friends, staff. At the community room, we've got some refreshments and some beverages for you, so you can head up there right now. Mayor and city council members, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should have cake when people would stay. All right. Council, we have before you a consent agenda for your consideration. Before you is consent agenda items 7A through 7Q, and I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through Q.
I'll second.
A motion on the table and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And consent agenda is approved. Moving on to our regular agenda, first for consideration is Resolution 213-2302, which is a donation for our hands-only CPR program, and the Forest Lake Fire Department and Chief Newman.
Mayor, members of the council, we would ask that you approve Resolution 2-13-23-02 with gratitude for the generous donation of $50 from Joan Paulson to support the hands-only CPR program.
Thank you, Chief. And I would motion approval with gratitude of Resolution 213-2302. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Next item, Resolution 213-2303, which is a donation of $1,000 from Maranatha Assembly of God Church to support the fire department and Chief Peterson, or Chief Newman.
Once again, we would ask you to approve Resolution 2-13-23-03 with gratitude for the generous donation of $1,000 from Maranatha Assembly of God to support fire prevention in the schools.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. And next, Resolution 213-2304, another a donation of $500 from Gerald Pelletier on the Veterans Memorial Project, and Abby.
Thank you. Gerald Pelletier has submitted a donation to the city of Forest Lake for $500 to contribute to the Forest Lake Veterans Memorial Project. Staff recommends you approve the enclosed resolution 02132304 with gratitude.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. All right. Item 8D, Resolution 213-2305, a joint powers agreement with BCA Forest Lake Police Department for the ICAC Task Force. Chief Peterson, I believe you're walking us through this.
Yeah, what I have before you is just that. It's a joint powers agreement between the state of Minnesota, or the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the city of Forest Lake. We initially had a very similar joint powers agreement in place, which recently expired, and the BCA has asked that we update the JPA. This joint powers agreement, known as the Minnesota Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, allows us to partner with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to work together to investigate and prosecute crimes committed against children and the criminal exploitation of children that is committed or facilitated by or through the use of computers, and to disrupt and dismantle organizations engaging in these activities. This JPA also assists the city in providing us reimbursement of equipment, training, and expenses that are incurred by the Forest Lake Police Department as a result of ongoing investigations through the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Our city attorney's office has reviewed the attached JPA agreement and approves of it. And staff recommendation is for the city council to approve the attached joint powers agreement as presented.
Thank you, Chief. Council, any questions for Chief on the joint powers agreement? Chief, if I understand, no substantial changes from our previous, or the expiring contract, it's essentially a renewal of
It's-
same?
Yeah, almost exactly the same. It's just with the, how long ago it was initially signed. There are, want to get your signatures on there. City Administrator Casey's, and I believe mine is also on there. And then, of course, just the dates.
Excellent. The duties within the joint powers agreement, how is that handled at staffing level? Just give us a little bit of background on.
So it is, we have two individuals who are trained in what's called Celebrate, and it is a it's a computer system and software program that is pretty expensive, and the BCA allows us to have this computer and software program, and it is in a very secure room, and there are currently 2 detectives that are trained in it, and then we also have a 3rd patrol officer that is going to be trained in it, actually, I think in the next couple of weeks. And what it does, it allows us to download items from computers, cell phones, things like that, that might help in the investigation. And then with this JPA, we can work with special agents with the BCA and who are assigned to the, it's called ICAC task force, and work hand in hand with them. And the computer equipment, it is anywhere from $3,500 to $6,000, $7,000. And if we do have a larger investigation, which we've had a couple in the last few years, that can, it could cost tens of thousands of dollars to investigate, and the equipment and staffing and such.
Yeah, it sure seems like a no-brainer. There's no question about that.
Agree.
So with that, Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve Resolution 02-1323-05, resolution approving the State of Minnesota Joint Powers Agreements with the City of Forest Lake on behalf of its Police Department regarding the Minnesota Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Resolution 213-2306, applying for a grant from the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, 2020 State Bond Funded Municipal Inflow and Infiltration Grant. And Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. In front of you is from the 2020 State Bond Funded Municipal Inflow and Infiltration Grant Program that we originally enrolled in. That $5 million was allocated throughout the state of Minnesota for communities on the Med Council service area. We've completed 3 projects that qualify within that. Upon pre-submittal of that early in the process, we knew we would be guaranteed a minimum of $50,000 with this grant. It's a pot, right? So upon tonight's formal process of going through this resolution, this is what's going to allow us to receive the money from the Met Council and submitting all the stuff per the grant agreements. And then depending on who all submits here, early part of March, we'll see then what money we got back. Some preliminary estimates were close to $200,000. So hopefully we're one of the cities that's maybe even over submitted versus what some other committees didn't fully submit what they originally showed. So this is lost my train of thought for once, right? Here we go. So basically, this is just a formal process to approve us to submit the grant application to the Met Council for reimbursement on projects you've already completed for and paid for that are eligible on a percentage basis. So with that, I'll open up with any questions you might have. Otherwise, we're looking for approval of the resolution within.
Any questions for Ryan? Ryan, is there so there's a $50,000 floor, is that right? So we're
already told we would receive a minimum of $50,000, depending on who all else submits and what percentage of projects. Each type of project has a different weighting on percent. We had a lining project that weighs relatively well, but we also had full sanitary sewer replacement, which weighs higher than that, and then some other related scope of work within those projects that apply. Each category has a different percent. It's all weighed out and stuff like that. So
And then grant proceeds ease the burden on both sewer and water funds?
This is sanitary sewer only.
Sewer only, okay.
And we would know the final amount approximately May 1st.
Thank you. Any other questions? Happy to entertain a motion if anyone's ready. I'll move that council approve Resolution 213-2306, which is our application for a grant from the Municipal Council, Environmental Services 2020 State Bond, Funded Municipal Inflow and Infiltration Grant Program.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Our next item this evening is service truck purchase approval, and Kevin, I believe you are walking us through.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, I'll be walking you through this memo as Dave is not here. Before you is approval to order a service truck that has been included in the 2023 budget. It will be replacing a 2017 service truck. This service truck will be handed down to the mechanic, which currently has a 2000 Chevy service truck, so that's 23 years old and is in need of replacement. The budget, there is a typo in the memo that was put together. The actual budget between these three funds is $127,500 instead of the $112,000 that's in your memo. Based on when we were reviewing the capital purchases and based on what Dave was seeing when the budget was going, it was determined that there might be some extra funds needed to cover the cost of this truck. This based on all the surcharges that are being imposed and what still could be imposed currently, and even when we get this approved. So this right now, as it sits, is under budget by about $22,600. The budget is split between the surface water fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund, each holding $42,500. So it's, we're recommending or looking for approval to go ahead and order this third service truck as presented in the 2023 budget.
Do we have an estimated delivery? Is there a delay on this piece of equipment like there's been on others, or?
I do not know what the anticipated delivery date would be on this. That is something I could follow up with Dave on, and he could send you that information.
I would assume that there's a delivery delay, being that it's two parts. One's the chassis, one's the cab. So like other things, we probably won't see that for at least a number of months, probably towards the end of the year, I would expect.
These
I know
sur-
we-
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go
Well, I
ahead.
was just gonna ask about the surcharges. I mean, that's something it's thin air until you get the bill, you know, but, was it supply chain issues, or what are they saying about those surcharges?
Surcharges are all over the board. It's obviously that people are saying inflation, they're saying supply chain, labor shortages. They're saying everything you can think of. We don't know what the surcharge, if there will be any of this at this point. We're hoping not, but it's just the way we're
Right.
seeing things now. And the earlier we order these things, the cheaper they're going to be. We never want to, with this kind of environment, we don't want to delay on the order, because a month from now, they'll raise the prices again, so.
That was going to be my just observation, is we've had a number of large equipment purchases here at the beginning of the year. However, given timelines for purchasing and timelines to actually
Yeah, the delivery.
get delivery,
Yeah, that's the
we
issue.
we need to make sure we're keeping an eye on that. So I'm happy to support this evening, but also open to any other questions others may have.
This is, yeah, it's already been budgeted for, and as long as we're under budget, and we can certainly, I guess, assume that the surcharges won't be beyond that, I hope.
It would be something, if the surcharges would go over the amount budgeted, we would bring it back to council at that point. At this point, it says placing an order. It's not committing to any funds or anything like that, where something outrageous came back where it's way over budget or something like that, where maybe there'd be a situation where we wouldn't go for it, we're not committing any funds at this point. It would just be based on my knowledge that once the chassis is in is when the first payment, when you would pay for that. And then the second part, the second payment of about $50,000 for the actual body, the service truck, the crane, would then be paid upon completion.
Yeah, understood.
I have no problem supporting it, Madam Mayor, so.
Anyone ready for a motion?
I'll make the motion, Madam Mayor, that we approve the purchase of the 2023 Chevrolet Silverado medium-duty cab service truck for the total that was, the corrected total that was mentioned by Kevin.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. Next item this evening, reconsideration of the zoning ordinance text amendment on electronic billboards that was tabled from a previous meeting. And Abby.
Thank you, Mary Bain. Members of the council, in early January this year, you held a public hearing to consider zoning text amendments proposed by Mr. Charles Bolcom. He was proposing 3 amendments to our billboard ordinance to better accommodate electronic billboards in the zoning code. His proposal specifically would allow for our billboard heights, any billboard, static or electric, to be 672 square feet. That the sign changing the duration would happen on a billboard would happen every 8 seconds, opposed to 15 in the code for all other dynamic display signs, and then require an approximately half-mile, 2,600 foot distance between electronic billboards, excuse me. At the meeting, you determined that you wanted some more time to review the ordinance so that the city had a little bit more oversight on amendments necessary to accommodate electronic billboards and any other addition changes. You elected to table consideration until this meeting. So since the time of that, we've discussed this with the Planning Commission and the direction provided by the council and drafted the enclosed ordinance amendment for your consideration. So included in that, we still would require permitting, but we're kind of proposing removing some of the application materials that just don't necessarily need to be listed in the code. The proposed language would prohibit display billboards that are not located along I-35, so there was a lot of discussion, Planning Commission and Council, about where should we be allowing the electronic billboards. They'd only be located along that I-35 corridor. All billboards, regardless if they're static or dynamic, would be 672 square feet, no greater than 672 square feet. And then, as directed by this body, and then the staff does include in your memo the standards that would apply to all billboards. I'm not going to necessarily go through those. They're there for you. A couple of the things that I brought up for discussion tonight is specifically seeking some direction. The city currently requires a separation distance of 500 feet per billboard. So from one billboard to the next, static display today out on the interstate, every 500 feet we could have a billboard. So the applicant was proposing a 2,600 square foot, kind of seeking some direction from the city council. You had asked to see what neighboring communities were doing. This was also presented to the Planning Commission at their last meeting. The Planning Commission is going to recommend the city impose an 1,800 to 2,000 square foot distance between each billboard, despite it being static or electronic. The Planning Commission, as a collective, I think, feels that there might be too many billboards along the I-35 corridor in Forest Lake. And one way to reduce the number in time is to impose a greater distance between them. If an 1,800 foot separation was imposed, the city could have up to 3 dynamic display signs along the corridor. And if billboards were elected to be removed, we could go down to no greater than 3 total billboards along that corridor. So that's just something for something for the council to discuss. And then lastly, the Planning Commission would like to see the base of all new billboard structures enhanced. So you might have seen along the 35 corridor when you're heading south, certainly in the city of Columbus, you'll see some that are more dressed up. The city of White Bear Township as well, I believe, has some requirements to aesthetically enhance the base of billboard signs. Those communities do require those billboard signs to be permitted by interim use permit. And when that interim use permit is up, and if a new one is renewed, then they would need to upgrade at that time. The city currently doesn't have any provisions for renewals in our permitting program. So this would have to be something that we would have to talk with our legal department about how and when we would initiate it. It's most likely that there would be some provision that when there was some sort of significant improvement, let's say if they were upgraded to electronic billboard, that could be the trigger. However, that is going to add a significant cost to the enhancements of these billboards, and it could prohibit or stifle the actual changeover to an electronic system. So those are the couple items that staff is just seeking direction on. This isn't just a discussion item. Because you've tabled this to this evening, we do have one more final consideration that we will have to rehold a new public hearing. So staff would recommend that you table it until the February 27th meeting, which we have already noticed for a new public hearing for this matter.
Thank you, Abby. So maybe let's take discussion items one by one, if I could suggest. First item for discussion, a kind of area for additional input is related to the separation distance between billboards. I want to make sure, Abby, that I'm properly categorizing the Planning Commission's feedback. They would say their recommendation was 1,800 to 2,000 feet between all billboards, whether they were static or dynamic.
Correct. And if Karen, you could just display my computer really quick, I'll show for the council and everyone who's watching at home, all the staff that hasn't seen this. Oh, goodness. This, sorry about that. My display every time forgets to just. So this is currently what our neighboring communities have for display distances. Many communities separate the distance, or have a separate distance for, have the same separation distance for static or display. The outlier there is Columbus. While Columbus allows billboards every 750 feet, they do require a 70 or 3,700 distance between dynamic displays. The city of Forest Lake's static display distance is 500 feet, so we do allow them a lot closer than any of kind of the local jurisdictions kind of just to the south of us or right neighboring to us. And then as proposed, Mr. Bolcom's request for the distance between dynamic display distance was 2,600, which is somewhere in the middle of some of the other communities imposed. The Planning Commission's request, or what their recommendation will be, and again, they are an advisory body to this, to the City Council. The City Council sets formal policy, but the Planning Commission would like to see a distance of 1,800 to 2,000, somewhere in there for all billboards, no matter if they're static or display or dynamic display.
If we were to do that, in our packet, you've got the total number of current billboards. If we were to do that, what does that mean for, it moves us down from current on this, we have 7, is that one?
Yeah, something like
It
that.
moves us from like 7 to 8 down to 3, is that what I heard you say?
It gives us the potential of 7 to 8 down to 3. So all of the billboards, anywhere you see a star on the map is a current billboard. All of those billboards would be permitted to remain in perpetuity.
Okay.
If a owner elected to remove it, then we would impose the new standards going forward. So they are allowed to replace it in its exact same size and shape, but they would not be able to, if they elected to remove it, wouldn't be able to put a new one in. The likelihood of these billboards going away is very slim, but it is a method in which communities do try to look, if they would like to reduce the number, imposing that greater distance. To answer, I think, your question, though, there would be every 1,800 feet, so 2,000 feet. Here's the 11th Avenue, here's Broadway. Can everyone see my screen there?
Mm-hmm.
Your 2,000 foot's just about halfway. So, you know, in theory, if you had one on the far south, you might get one in the middle. You might want to get one here. You might get a fourth one up north of Broadway still.
That just feels really restrictive. I can appreciate the limit of, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't want to see all 500 changed to electronic display. But certainly, I think mixing in a number of electronic displays in our current footprint makes sense. I guess I just I don't see us as being an outlier, and the data kind of shows that we're not too far off from some of the communities to the south. That's just my personal thoughts, just to kick us off on some discussion. I'm open to hear others.
But at the same time, we would require 2,600 feet between the changeable signs. Is that what I'm reading here?
That is what's being proposed by the original applicant. Staff, personally, when we're looking at some of the other jurisdictions, you know, Columbus being our neighbor right next to us, we are, when it comes to the static display, we have more. We can have more. But they have a higher number of that dynamic display. So if we're looking for conformity or alignment with our very direct neighbor, I'd say keeping that 500 or maybe a slight increase to 750 or 1,000 for static displays, and then that 2,600 for dynamic, that still would allow, again, that, you know, maybe 4, but more likely 3 within the community. Again, there's a buffer distance imposed, so we'd have to do those measurements, but it looks like we'd still be able to permit at 3. One of the concerns of having a smaller buffer is that you could end up having more, and I guess it's not necessarily a concern, but then there could be an oversaturation in the market versus having a limited number provides still that market demand, but doesn't necessarily create maybe that, we've talked about that Times Square effect that the community might not want to see.
Other thoughts, questions?
I think there is on this map, I believe there's one that is missing, which would be on the southwest corner between Whitaker, GMC, and Famous Dave's. That we used to advertise on that, and I don't see that marked as one, so just a point of reference there. And I don't know what that would do, change, because there's nothing on that side really, so that would maybe allow for another one regardless of what the,
You're saying at the southwest corner of the map here?
sorry, southwest corner of 35 in Broadway, County Road 2.
I believe that there is one that has been permitted by MnDOT, but I don't believe it meets the city standards for permitting. I don't know if there is one there right now. Is that what you're saying?
Unless they've taken it down,
Okay.
I think there's one there, but.
Sure, thanks.
And as far as the distance, I think that, to your point, a little bit, don't want to be an outlier. I think I'd be more comfortable in that, similar to what White Bear and Township and Vadnais Heights, somewhere in there seems to make a little bit more sense. Not as restrictive, but still maintaining some type of, so it doesn't get filled completely up.
What is the difference in what is the math to Councilmember Roberts' point? What is the math difference of if the current proposal allows for 3, if we were to drop that down to, so for example, Vadnais Heights standards of 1,500, does that mean 1 extra?
Probably, but if you can give me a
Little math
second, I can
challenge.
do some If you give me just a second, I
Yeah,
can
for
figure
sure.
that out for you.
Okay.
And then I guess if the council, if there's, isn't more discussion, maybe you want to just talk briefly while I do this about the base aesthetics? That
Yeah.
could at least keep the conversation moving, so you're not necessarily waiting on me on this one. It'll take just a minute for me to do that.
Yep, understand. Let's transition to base aesthetics. Of course, I just lost my spot. So we currently do not have, I just want to make sure I understand current state, currently do not have any requirements of base aesthetics. This point is being raised from Planning Commission, is pointing out that it's kind of asking that we consider, am I
That is
understanding
correct.
chain
Yep.
properly? That's, I guess
I personally like the idea. I know that does add additional expense to the operator, but it just gives it a nicer look, a little classier. Some of them, I think, actually have it where they have the city's name on there as well.
Right.
That's kind of a nice touch, I guess. I'd be in favor of something like that.
Do we, and to piggyback on that, is that a requirement for all billboards? Or how does that work into, if we were to make that change, is it all billboards? Is it all billboards upon a certain change? What is that? How do we grandfather a
I'd have to
transition
work
that?
with our legal counsel. I believe that the only way we can impose it is when there would be some sort of substantial improvement or change. And so I don't believe that we could write an ordinance and just say, okay, everybody, you got 60 days to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be at the time of conversion or modernization would probably be that trigger. Again, we'd have to take a look with Amanda. It would be a pretty sizable investment for these operators. Now, some of them might just be able to build that into their business model, but it would be a significant cost that they would incur at the time of modernization if that was the trigger. I believe that would be have to be the trigger, would be some sort of, you are going to make a substantial improvement, we're going to tell you, you also have to make this improvement as well.
As we bring this back for further consideration, I'd be interested in seeing which communities require that, just neighboring communities. I believe it is White Bear Township that requires it, and are they the outlier? It'd be just good to know.
Sure, I know Columbus for sure, and I'm not sure if all of White Bear Townships, the big one in White Bear Township is on township land. I believe it's owned by the township, so that might be why that one is as pretty as that one is, for lack of a better phrase. But I can definitely take a look at that. I at least see some head nodding. We can explore that with council. It's our hope to have a final ordinance for you at your meeting at the 27th, so we can definitely incorporate into the staff memo some potential language if the council wants to include that.
I'm also interested in, there's kind of a good, better, best concept of, do we have to go from 0 to the Taj Mahal of requirements? And I would be open to something that might be some level of design standard that maybe ups our game, but maybe isn't overly punitive to, I don't want to make this so expensive that no one's able to afford them either.
Sure.
One question I
I'd
have. Oh, I'm sorry, were you done?
I'm interested in applicant feedback on that topic when we have open for, if we have community feedback or in our next session. So. Councilmember Husnick, I interrupted you.
Well, no problem. These distances we're talking about, we're basically talking about one side of the freeway.
Yes, because we do
So
measure.
if there's a billboard on the other side, how does that affect these distances?
Our measurements are based from the billboard out. The distance, even right now, I believe our 500-foot separation distance kind of excludes the ones on the west side.
Okay.
Because you're measuring out or, in a linear distance out.
Okay, I was just trying to get it straight in my mind how these dimensions are used, so.
So I at least have some direction that it seems like there's some quite a few of you that want at least the option for some good, better, best aesthetic requirements. We'll talk with our legal counsel, we'll look at other ordinances. Just going back to the distance requirement, it would be the inclusion of about 4 total if we had a 1,300 foot versus a 1,500 foot.
I feel like we're missing a homework requirement. You had another discussion item as well, right?
Nope, that was it.
That was it,
So
okay.
really just seeking direction. So it sounds like somewhere around that 1,300 to 1,500 feet is where this body is more comfortable than the commission was. And so we can definitely finalize the ordinance based on that direction. And, you know, at the last meeting, we can, I'm sure it'll be just based on what the council is feeling at that time, but I'll definitely provide some more detail in writing about the differences between 1,300, 1,500, and 2,600, because that, so.
It's on my mind, so I'll mention it now. I'll say it out loud now. But one of the things that I'm concerned about on requiring design upgrade upon a significant change is that we disincent making just basic maintenance because it becomes that much more expensive and we end up with just really crummy looking billboards that aren't upgraded at all because we've made it so expensive to do so. So I've just, that's part of what I'm trying to balance.
I had that same thought, even though when I do drive down 35 and go through White Bear Township, their billboards look so nice.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's that balancing act.
It still would require council action though tonight to table the item until your February 27th meeting.
Is there any further discussion? Once a motion to table is made, we stop discussion. So I just want to make sure that we've captured everything so far. I would move that we table to our February 27th meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Thank you. All right, we will, that ends our regular agenda items for the evening. We're going to move into a quick workshop topic. And just a quick note for those watching, this workshop topic is discussion only. Anything that we discuss that requires council action will come before us at a future council meeting. And with that, Patrick, I think you're looking for some feedback or have some information for us on the bonding bill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. As most of you know, the city, for the first time about 3 years ago, requested funds from the legislature. It's something the city never did before. And we were fortunately granted $1.7 million for the rehab of some of our lift stations. At the last bonding bill, which was last year, we then requested, at the time, I believe it was $5.7 million to build a regional stormwater pond system. We thought that was what came up, and we thought that was a great project, and it still is a great project. The bonding bill is again in front of us. The state legislature is taking requests for a bonding bill. And how that works is that we submit our proposal. One of the 3 of our representatives will introduce a bill both in the House and in the Senate based on what we are requesting. And then there's a series of public hearings that we may have to testify at. There's also a possible site visit that the bonding committee goes through. We actually didn't have a site visit the last time when we had $1.7 million. However, we did catch them on their tour at a luncheon. And the last time when we talked about the stormwater pond, we were in Scandia with Scandia when they were asking for funding for their project. This year, staff met and looked at what the priorities are, we believe are the priorities for a bonding bill and what will qualify. One of the larger considerations is the impact on our budget and trying to find funds to do some major projects and hopefully offsetting those funds with a bonding bill request so that we don't have to bond for them or go into debt for them. The major projects are outlined in the memo that we gave to council, and I'll go through those really quickly. We are requesting we will hope to request, if the council agrees, $25 million for a new public works building, and which would include the remediation of the old public works site, tearing it down, possibly turning it into a park or whatever the future may bring there. It's always a good idea, in most cases, is to have a matching funds for a bonding bill. So we would recommend that we go forward with a $5 million match on the $25 million request. That'll give us $30 million. Why this amount of money? Well, I've done some research, talked to the county's design people who last designed their I believe it's their North Public Works facility, and they recommend bonding or requesting $25 to $28 million. That's what they're seeing for a size of a public works building that we would need, based on what their last experience is. So that's what we're going with. The $5 million would obviously, we'd have to bond for that, and part of that would be from the water fund, part from sewer fund, and possibly the regular general fund debt service. I would encourage the council, if we can get $25 million for $5 million, that's a pretty good deal. And I think it's a good project. Reviewing some of the submissions to date, I have seen 2, 3, 4 at least public work buildings requests from different communities, running from anywhere from smaller communities of $15 million up to $25 million. The second request, we know that Eureka Avenue is not a great road. We've come to the council and talked about that again. We once talked to the council about the possible closing of that road. I guarantee you I won't say that again out loud, so it's not a problem. However, it presents quite a big challenge because it really is sandwiched between I-35 and the lake there. It's soft, it's narrow, it's dangerous. So the concept would be a total reconstruction of Eureka Avenue. It's probably one of the most challenging and expensive projects for a road that we will run into in this community. We're suggesting a $4.5 million price tag for that. Now, we still have to talk about what that match is. We haven't sat down and figured what that match might be. So that $4.5 million may come down to $3.5 million or something like that. And in the packet, there was a draft resolution, or draft bonding bill, actually. It's actually wrote the bills to submit to the legislature, so it would make it easy to get it in there. There's a difference of price there, so we have to work that out. But we think that's a good project. It would include not only road reconstruction, but possibly a bicycle paths, a fishing pier, something like that. And what you're trying to do there is get the road in there, but you're also trying to make it attractive on the natural side and the fishing pier and the community. And so we'll write up some kind of a synopsis once we're asked for it to kind of give them the picture of what we're trying to do there. So it's a little more than just a road reconstruction. It's kind of a community asset what we're trying to get to, which we believe is attractive to some of the bonding committee. And finally, we get back to the stormwater pond that we requested last year. Unfortunately, that was last year, and we now are going to request $7.5 million for that stormwater pond. That shows you what's going on with that type of project. It's still a good project. We still have support from our downstream neighbors. It's a good idea to try to keep the water here before it goes downstream, to slow it down. It also will allow us to build a facility that then, as development comes to the southern part of town, every subdivision may not have to build their own stormwater pond. And that may help us attract more developers so that they don't have to put the money in there. That's a big project. $7.5 million is a lot for that, but we will put that in and see how we go. If I were to be asked which one should the city, if you had to choose one, which one would you choose? I would still choose the Public Works building. I think it's the most effective and most less impact on our budget. If we can get $25 million and not have to bond for the full $25 million or to $30 million, we'll be way ahead of the game on that. So I would recommend that the council consider these three projects, and I believe that they are in the priority that we should submit them. And I'll be happy to answer questions or comments on these projects.
Quick question, when we submit, do we give our own prioritization? Like, or is it,
I've had 2 meetings with our representatives, Representative Anderson and Representative, I believe it's Hill, and I have told them what our priorities are. I have a meeting with Representative Senator Housley on the 6th of March, and I will also indicate that this is our priority. In addition to that, we've had communications from our federal House representative. They have earmark projects that have come back into the process in Washington. We will also include the Public Works building in that. So we will be asking for federal money and state money and hoping to get one of those to fund it.
questions, thoughts, feedback for Patrick?
Were there any other projects, I think of one and maybe it doesn't make the list based on requirements, but North Shore, when you talk to people about how rough road that one and talking about, it used to be a county road for a reason. A lot of traffic goes through there, so not sure if that would be.
We talked about North Shore. The difference between North Shore and Eureka is that we can kind of make Eureka sound real nice and hit a couple of different buckets on that. If we were to do North Shore, we should include more streets as a bigger package. So for example, if we said major road reconstruction, we should have North Shore, we should have whatever the other ones are, Forest Road and things like that. What we thought is, being that this is the most challenging road, even though North Shore is a big project, this is very challenging because of the way the soil is there and the narrowness of it, that this writes, be honest, a better story.
That's the hard part about this, is it's partly about what sells the better story, and I mean, financially, the Public Works building is clearly the most financially impactful, but there's a lot of great things about the $7.5 million stormwater retention project. It just, you start talking about it and people's eyes glaze over, and I think people don't understand what it is, and it's hard to sell because it's just, it's a little bit boring.
It's pretty conceptual, and
holding water that, preventing floods, that, I don't know, it's
the
not
other thing
exciting until it's flooded.
Yeah, you have to imagine how many communities are requesting bonding money. If I recall, I don't know when the last time we did it, like 800 projects that were requested or more.
Yeah, when we got our first round, I think we sat next to each other listening to these stories from other communities, and our feedback was, we have no chance, because you hear some of the stories of, if this Public Works project doesn't happen, a community's like at risk of dumping raw sewage into a river, and we're like, well, thankfully we're not that far, that far removed. However, we were also successful, and so it's hard to just know based on kind of how the project aligns with all of the other projects and just what the appetite is for overall investment. And sometimes it's water, sometimes it's environmental, sometimes it's kind of hard to know.
It is difficult, and again, it depends on how you write it up and what kind of the hooks are. And I think we have some good stories with all three of these. For example, the stormwater project will include land for a possible new elementary school if needed, depending on demographics. So we partner with the school so we can take advantage of, have some backing from the school. If they never need it, then we just have an additional 40 acres of something. So there's a lot of good things with all three of these projects. I think we can be pretty, hopefully we're successful. Again, it just depends on how the committee, and right now we don't know what the dollar amount is in the total bonding package, how much the surplus is going to happen, or how much the actual bonding bill is going to be itself. So, but what we have to do is get it in early. We're going to try to get it in by the end of this week. We will send the representatives the draft legislation Then what will happen later, once those are introduced, the staffs and things of the committees will ask us for the narratives to be submitted. But we're trying to get this in because I was encouraged by both our representatives to not wait too long to get these in. The earlier the better, to get it in front of people and go forward.
Get the foot in the door. That's basically what it amounts to.
Yeah, I like this list. One thing that popped into my brain when I was reading this for Eureka Ave is with the reconstruction of 97, that road might be used quite a bit, depending on all of that. So, yeah, I'm pleased with this priority list.
Yeah, we agree that the Eureka will probably be used as a detour, or at least a unofficial detour. We just don't know the timing, when we're going to get these and how we're going to get these, and depending on when we can do Eureka, when we can do a public works building, and so forth. So once the bonding bill is set, and if we are successful in any of those, we'll know better what the timetable is on all of that. Hopefully, Eureka may be before 2025. We just don't know.
I think this is a good list. I also think about North Shore Trail and there's a regional answer there. There's a long-awaited, recreational amenity there. Sometimes that also gets some, if you're able to check a number of different boxes. But we have to also come in with a reasonable ask, and I think this is a portfolio. There's a number of different size projects, different types of projects. I think it kind of has to put the submission in and let it evolve based on how it's stacked up against other projects.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're going to, for the first time, submit to the federal, because the earmarks just came back, I think it was last year or the year before, which they suspended for quite a while. But now we can ask for those, so I think it's a great thing to ask for that in two places and see if we get them both. We'll just pick which one is easier for us to use. So.
Right. Other points of feedback? All right.
They're all important projects,
They
no
are,
question
very much.
about it.
So if there's no objection, we'll go forward with this list as it is and submit this to both the federal government and state for the bonding bill.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Do a quick round of staff updates before we move into staff and council updates before we move into our closed session. Karen, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I just want to give a quick update on the Board of Appeals and Equalization meeting. So that deals with the property taxes and when the county comes here. They have worked on firming up all the dates, so now the schedule is set. That meeting will be on April 10th, which you should know is the day after Easter, in case anybody's doing any traveling. County does want, by statute, you need to have at least one council member trained. County prefers at least two. I think, I'm gonna double check, and I will let you know tonight if I can, or tomorrow morning for sure. That window may have closed, so I'm not sure how many of you are trained right now. But if the window's still open and we don't have anybody, we need to make sure. I'll send an email out to you, probably in the morning.
I think we have at least Councilmember Valento and myself, if those are still active.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll double check. I'll look at the list and.
And what time
see.
does that meeting start?
That meeting will start from, it's scheduled to be from 5:30 to 6:30.
April
Dan,
10th.
we'll have to cancel EDA that evening.
Any other questions about that? And that's all I have.
Thank you, Karen. Dan?
I have no updates unless you have questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Abby?
No updates either.
Patrick?
I mentioned earlier, last week I met with Representative Hill regarding bonding bill, administrative ticketing, things like that. And starting on the 20th, I'll be out of the office for 2 weeks. Available by email with delayed response.
Excellent, very good. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Council, Your Honor. Two things. One, follow-up on the licensing question from the last meeting regarding dual licenses for, license fees for liquor and tobacco. Did check in on that, and it is the exact same background check. So the ones that had the double license fee this time, Karen is working on getting those refunded, and then moving forward, if somebody is applying for both a liquor license and a tobacco license, there will be one background check fee moving forward.
Great catch.
And then the second thing is just an FYI, at the February 27th meeting, we will have a closed session on an update on the Forest Hills Farms litigation. I hope at that point that we'll have a settlement agreement that we can present for council's consideration as well.
Thank you, Amanda. Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, two things. February 21st, we have our bid opening for our local streets pavement maintenance project. So just be honest, we are anticipating prices higher than what we've communicated based on what we're seeing on current bidding. So we'll work with Kevin to identify funding options in the City Council memo when we do bring that back for a potential award. Just wanted to be blunt about where the situation lies with the current economic bidding that we're seeing. And just a friendly reminder, if it's not on your calendar yet, the public open house for County State Aid Highway 32 or 11th Avenue is 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. on February 27th prior to your City Council meeting that night. So hope to see you guys in attendance for that one.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Chief Newman?
No updates unless you have questions for me.
All right. Kim?
No updates unless you have any questions.
Kevin?
No updates from me either.
All right. Bring it up to council for updates. We'll start with Councilmember Roberts.
No updates.
Councilmember Valento.
Just a reminder that the Forest Lake Rotary is having their winter plunge on Saturday, so be sure to register for those who want to jump into the freezing cold water. I'll be there representing the City Council, and I'm jumping for Renew Hope, and so it should be super fun.
Excellent.
And that's it for me.
Thank you. Very good. Councilmember Husnick.
I have no updates tonight, Mara.
All right. Just a quick update. We had a great EDA meeting this right before our council meeting. We had our first meeting with our new EDA members seated. We do still have one open EDA seat, have a number of interested applicants for that position, so expect to have that filled at our next council meeting. We reconsidered the plan for, there was a plan for a proposal to evaluate the boat launch and whether that was both either relocation possibilities as well as just changing trailer-only parking, and then also the shoreline study. I had a presentation with some updated materials from Bruce that had helped us with the downtown study. I had a good discussion on that topic, and EDA eventually approved that study to move forward. We did add in, we know that the Forest Lake Association is excited about the opportunity to partner with us on some additional transient dock space. So we did add that consideration into the study. And kind of with the guidance that we have this near-term opportunity to move that forward. Let's keep that moving while we are also making these other considerations related to broader shoreline use and also what we're ultimately going to do with the boat launch and trailer parking. So it's good to see those things moving ahead. We also had some good discussion and heard a great update from the Forest Lake Chamber on their 2022 kind of year-end review, and then we also renewed our BR&E agreement with the Forest Lake Chamber and upped our level of support from $5,000 to $7,500, just in recognition of the additional efforts that they've been putting forward, kind of our broader partnership. So that's was good as well. So active agenda, and good to see things getting kicked off for the EDA, even with some new members in seats. You always don't know how that first meeting is going to go, and we had a really good discussion, so I'm excited about things to come. That's the end of my update. I do know we have a closed session. Councilmember Husnick, you want to move us into closed session?
I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.03 for labor negotiations. The closed session would be held at the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open portion of the meeting. As there are no other items on the agenda, once back in session, the council will adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose, and we're in closed session. Thank you, everyone.